The morning rain tapped softly against the windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery, while Karis Monroe arranged a fresh batch of cupcakes in the display case. Each cupcake had a tiny sugar violet on top, her signature detail. She loved these quiet early hours before customers showed up, when she could think clearly and enjoy the warm smell of vanilla and cinnamon. "Welcome to Voices of Auntie May," she said. "I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you listen till the end." At exactly 7:30, the phone rang, which was strange because customers rarely called that early. "Hello, this is Karis," she said, holding the phone between her ear and shoulder while still arranging cupcakes. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe. I'm Barclay Quinn from the law firm Quinn Owen & Associates. I'm calling about the estate of your godmother, Ms. Aries Holloway." Karis froze. Aries had passed away 3 weeks earlier after a long fight with cancer. Karis had gone to the funeral, but afterward she buried herself in work, trying not to think about the woman who had been like a second mother to her. "Oh yes, of course. What can I do for you? Ms. Holloway left you an inheritance. We need to meet to complete the paperwork. It's urgent because of the nature of the assets." "Assets?" Karis repeated. "I don't understand. Aries never mentioned any inheritance." "Your godmother left you her restaurant, Ms. Monroe. The Legacy Crown." Karis's hand shook, and one cupcake slipped from the tray and hit the floor. The Legacy Crown wasn't just any restaurant. It was the most famous one in Atlanta. Politicians, celebrities, and top business leaders all ate there. Aries had built it from a tiny cafe into a legendary place over the course of 30 years. "There must be some mistake," Karis whispered. "No mistake, Ms. Monroe. Ms. Holloway was very clear. You were like a daughter to her. She believed you were the only one who could keep the restaurant's legacy alive." An hour later, Karis sat in Mr. Quinn's office, staring at paperwork that confirmed she now owned the restaurant, valued at several $1,000,000. "Aries knew her diagnosis for over a year," the lawyer explained. "She planned everything carefully. Besides the restaurant, there's a wine cellar, vendor contracts, and special instructions for the staff. She also left a letter for you." Karis took the envelope with shaking hands. On the front were the words, "To my dearest Karis," in Aries's familiar slanted handwriting. "Can I take this home?" she asked. "Yes, of course. But we need to finalize the transfer in the next few days. The restaurant can't be without management for long." Karis nodded, still stunned. She remembered walking into the Legacy Crown's kitchen for the first time when she was 9. Her mother had been a pastry chef there until she passed away from pneumonia when Karis was 14. After that, Aries took her in, paid for her schooling, and taught her everything she knew about baking. "You're special, Karis," Aries used to say. "Your hands feel the dough, and your heart puts love into it." Lost in those memories, Karis barely noticed signing the last pages. She had learned everything she knew about the restaurant world from Aries, but running the Legacy Crown still felt impossible. When she got home around noon, she hoped she'd have time to read Aries's letter before Jarvis returned from work. But his car was already in the driveway of their small suburban house. They'd met 6 years earlier at a charity dinner hosted by Jarvis's company. Karis had been in charge of the desserts. Jarvis came up to her holding her lavender and honey cake, saying he'd never tasted anything like it. They married a year later. "Karis, are you home?" Jarvis called. His voice was tense. She walked into the living room. He was on the sofa with a glass of whiskey, which was strange for 2 in the afternoon. "What's wrong? Why aren't you at work?" Jarvis looked up. He was a handsome man, tall dark hair, well-shaped features. But today his usual confidence had turned into panic. "My mother called," he said. "She said you inherited the Legacy Crown. Is it true?" Karis froze. She hadn't told anyone yet. How did he know? "So it is true." Jarvis took a long drink. "Karis, why didn't you tell me?" "I just got back from the lawyer. I was going to tell you tonight." Mom heard from the wife of one of the waiters at the Crown. "Everyone there is shocked. Aries left the restaurant to you. Not the chef, not anyone in management." Karis felt her cheeks burn. Of course people would be surprised. A small bakery owner inheriting one of Atlanta's top restaurants. Aries was my godmother. We were very close. But a real restaurant? Jarvis got up and started pacing. Do you know what this means? This isn't a bakery with 3 tables and cupcakes. It's a multi-million-dollar business. Karis held the envelope with Aries' letter. Jarvis wasn't wrong. She had never handled something so big. But Aries believed in her. I can do this, she said. Aries taught me so much. Karis, be realistic, Jarvis said, stopping in front of her. You make beautiful cakes, but what do you know about wine lists? About hiring? About balance sheets? I can learn, she said softly. Jarvis dragged a hand through his hair, something he only did when he was really irritated. Mom says this whole thing is crazy, and honestly I agree. At the mention of Tamsin Niles, Karis felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. Tamsin had never approved of her. She always said baker, like it was an insult. What does your mother have to do with this? Karis asked, trying to stay calm. Jarvis looked away. She's coming over for dinner. She wants to discuss the situation. Discuss my inheritance? Our inheritance, Jarvis corrected. We're married, remember? The word stung. For 6 years, Jarvis hadn't cared about her bakery. He treated it like a cute hobby that made a little money. And now suddenly everything was ours. That evening, the house filled with Tamsin's expensive perfume. As always, she walked in without knocking, calling, "I'm here, darlings." Tall, perfectly styled, and flawless at 60, Tamsin greeted Karis with a quick air kiss. "Karis, honey, what incredible news. You must be in shock." "Hello, Tamsin," Karis said politely. "Yes, it was unexpected." "I'm sure it was. Aries was always a bit eccentric." Tamsin strolled into the living room, tossing her coat into Jarvis's arms. "Remember Jarvis? I told you how she refused to serve a state representative because he was 15 minutes late? Quite the temper." Karis stayed quiet. Tamsin had never even met Aries. She only repeated stories she heard from Atlanta socialites. During dinner, which Karis had prepared earlier, Tamsin immediately started outlining her plan to take over. "I've spoken to Fielding," she said to Jarvis, ignoring Karis completely. "He thinks we need to act fast. The restaurant market is booming, especially for luxury places like the Legacy Crown." "Who is Fielding?" Karis asked. "Oh, just my financial advisor," Tamsin said dismissively. "Anyway, we have 2 options. 1, sell the restaurant right away while its reputation is strong. Or," she paused dramatically, "I could take over." Karis almost choked. "Excuse me, what?" "Oh, don't look at me like that, dear," Tamsin said lightly. "I wasn't always a housewife. I worked as an accountant for a major company before I married. I've always dreamed of owning a restaurant." "You never mentioned that," Karis said. "There was no reason to," Tamsin replied with a shrug. "But now that we have the chance, Jarvis, honey, say something." Jarvis looked torn, glancing between his mother and his wife. "Mom has a point, Karis. She knows finance. And I could help with the technical stuff, like the website and reservations." "And what about me?" Karis asked quietly. "Aries left the restaurant to me." Tamsin patted her hand. "Honey, no one is saying you can't be part of it. You can handle the desserts. They're lovely. But management is different. You need experience and connections." Karis thought of the unopened letter from Aries in her purse. She should have read it earlier. "I need time to think," she said. "This is a big decision." "Of course, dear," Tamsin replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just don't take too long. Business waits for no one." After Tamsin finally left, Karis locked herself in the bathroom and opened Aries' letter. "My dearest Karis," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Don't be too sad. I lived a good life, and I'm proud of what I built, especially proud of you. I'm leaving you the Legacy Crown not because I had no other heirs, but because you're the only one I trust. You have what the restaurant needs: taste, intuition, hard work, and most importantly, heart. You give people joy, not just food. That's rare. I know you doubt yourself, but remember, I started with a tiny cafe and no experience. All I had was passion and a willingness to learn. The staff will help you. Chef Bram Cassidy has been my right hand for 15 years. Manager Nita Price knows every part of the business. They're waiting for you and ready to support you. And one more thing. Not all documents and assets were handed over today. Some details only Barkley knows. Contact him if you need help. Believe in yourself the way I believe in you. With love, Aries. Karis pressed the letter to her chest as tears rolled down her cheeks. Aries believed in her. She couldn't let her down. When she left the bathroom, Jarvis was waiting in the bedroom with papers in hand. Here, he said. It's a power of attorney. Mom thinks it'll be easier if you let her run the restaurant. Just temporarily. Karis looked at the papers, then at her husband. She remembered the man who once praised her cakes and called her talented. When had that changed? Or had he always been this weak, just hiding behind his mother? No. Karis said softly but firmly. I'm not signing it. Jarvis's face twisted with anger. Karis, don't be stubborn. You know you can't handle the restaurant. Mom wants to help you. Your mother wants to take what's mine. Karis felt her resolve harden inside her. Aries believed in me. She knew exactly what she was doing. Jarvis threw the papers onto the bed. Aries was a selfish old woman. She used you your whole life. First as free help, then as emotional comfort, and now she's dumped a business on you that you're guaranteed to fail at. Don't talk about her like that. For the first time, Karis raised her voice at him. You know nothing about my relationship with her. I know my wife has been baking cupcakes in a tiny bakery for 6 years, barely making any profit. Jarvis stepped closer. And suddenly you have a restaurant worth millions. What do you think people will say? What will the Legacy Crown's customers think when they find out their favorite place is now owned by a woman who's never run anything bigger than a sheet cake? Every word hit like a slap. Karis felt her confidence slipping away. Maybe he was right. Maybe she really couldn't do it. I need time to think about this, she said, stepping back toward the door. There's no time, Karis. Jarvis grabbed the papers and followed her. Mom already talked to the vendors. They're expecting a decision. Either you let us help, or... He didn't finish, but the threat hung in the air. Karis felt trapped. She'd never been good at standing up to people, especially the ones closest to her. Her whole life she'd avoided conflict, given in, tried to keep the peace. All right, she finally said. I'll sign. But only if it's temporary, 1 month at most. And I want to be told about every single decision. The relief on Jarvis's face was almost visible. Of course, darling. That's fair. He placed the papers on the table and handed her a pen. Karis took it slowly, feeling a heavy weight settle on her shoulders. She saw Aries' face in her mind, her warm smile, her steady voice. Believe in yourself as I believe in you. Just then the phone rang. Karis jumped and dropped the pen. I'll get it, Jarvis muttered, annoyed by the interruption. While he took the call, Karis looked over the documents again. The power of attorney didn't give Tamsin temporary control. It gave her total control. No limits. No end date. It wasn't a temporary arrangement. It was a takeover. Jarvis walked back in, eyes blazing. It was Mom. She talked to the chef at the Crown. He says he'll quit if management doesn't make a decision by tomorrow. We have to act now, Karis. She knew he was lying. Bram was loyal to Aries to his core. He would never threaten to quit, and certainly not to Tamsin, a woman he hadn't even met. Something inside Karis snapped. For 6 years she had swallowed every insult about her bakery, every condescending remark from Tamsin, every time they treated her career like a hobby, and now they were trying to take the one thing Aries left her. No, she said firmly. There was no shake in her voice this time. Jarvis stepped toward her, furious. What do you mean no? I am not signing those papers. The Legacy Crown belongs to me. Aries wanted me to have it, and I will not fail her. Oh, Karis. Jarvis slammed his fist on the table. You're going to ruin the restaurant. You're going to destroy a business that took 30 years to build. Maybe, she said calmly. But if anything happens, it will be my decision and my responsibility. Jarvis's face darkened. He grabbed the papers and his phone. Fine. Since you've made up your mind, I'll call my mother. She'll handle this. Karis watched him dial, surprisingly calm. She knew she'd just crossed a line her marriage might never come back from. But strangely, the thought didn't scare her at all. Tamsin arrived 20 minutes later, as if she'd been waiting by the door for the call. She stormed inside without even pretending to be polite. Karis, she started sharply, without so much as a hello. Jarvis told me everything. I understand you're emotional and confused. Ares's death was upsetting, but this is not the time for sentimental decisions. Karis just looked at her. 6 years she had chased this woman's approval. 6 years of ignoring her manipulation and control over Jarvis. I've made my decision, Tamsin, Karis said evenly. I'm going to run the restaurant myself. Tamsin barked out a harsh laugh. Honey, be serious. You're a baker, not a businesswoman. The legacy crown is complicated. Dozens of employees, vendors, VIP customers. One wrong move, and everything collapses. Is that what you want? No, Karis said softly. That's exactly why I'm not putting the restaurant in your hands. Tamsin's face went from pale to red in an instant. She turned to Jarvis. Explain to your wife that she's making a mistake. Jarvis looked torn as his gaze flicked between the two women. Karis, please. Let's be reasonable. I am being reasonable, she replied. Ares trusted me with the restaurant. I have a team who will help me. I can do this. A team? Tamsin scoffed. You mean those arrogant cooks and waiters? They won't listen to you. They'll see how inexperienced you are and leave. I'm willing to take that risk, Karis said, turning to walk away. Stop. Jarvis grabbed her arm. You can't just walk away. We need to settle this now. Karis pulled her arm free. There's nothing to settle. The restaurant is mine and I'm going to run it. Jarvis's face twisted with anger. He rushed to the table where the official document sat. Enough. He grabbed the papers. Since you can't make a rational decision, I will make it for you. What are you doing? Karis tried to reach for the papers, but Jarvis shoved her aside. What you should have agreed to from the beginning. He turned to his mother. Here, Mom. The restaurant is yours now. Do whatever you want with it. Tamsin smiled smugly as she took the papers. Good boy. I always knew you'd make the right decision. Karis watched, feeling something inside her finally break. Her husband had just handed her inheritance to his mother like it was nothing. You can't do that, she said. Those documents are in my name. Marital property, dear. Tamsin said, patting Karis's cheek. Jarvis has just as much right to it as you do, and he chose to trust me. It's legal. Karis knew that was a lie. Inheritances weren't marital property under Georgia law, but the papers were in Tamsin's hands now. She looked at Jarvis, searching for the man she had married, but all she saw was a stranger with a smug, self-satisfied smile. You're going to regret this, she said quietly. I don't think so, he replied with a shrug. In a month, when Mom has the restaurant running even better, you'll thank us. Karis picked up her purse and jacket. Where are you going? Jarvis asked, suddenly anxious. She gave him a small smile. To my bakery. I have a lot of orders tomorrow. Then she walked out, feeling oddly light. The Atlanta night was cool, smelling faintly of rain. She expected to feel devastated, furious, crushed by what had just happened. But instead, she felt calm, determined. She didn't want to go back home, not to those two celebrating their victory. Instead, she drove to Sweet Dreams Bakery, the only place where she truly felt like herself. The bakery was warm when she opened the door, greeting her with the familiar scent of vanilla and cinnamon. Like a hug she'd needed all day. She looked around at her tiny shop. 4 tables, a display case, a small kitchen behind a frosted panel. It didn't have the legacy crown's grandeur, but it had something better. It felt like home. Karis took out her phone and called a number she rarely used, though it had always been saved in her contacts. Barclay Quinn answered on the 3rd ring. Mr. Quinn, this is Karis Monroe. I'm sorry for calling so late. Not a problem, Ms. Monroe. Is something wrong? She took a slow breath. The restaurant deeds. My husband took them and gave them to his mother. They believe they have the right to. One moment. Barkley's voice turned sharp. Are you telling me your husband took the deeds without your consent? Yes. He said they were marital property. Barkley let out a dry laugh. They are not. Inheritances are not marital property in Georgia, unless the will specifically states otherwise. And don't worry, we have copies of everything, and the originals have already been filed legally. Whatever your husband and his mother do, they can't change ownership without your notarized signature. Karis felt some of the tension fade. So, I'm still the legal owner? Of course. But if they try to pretend to act on your behalf without authorization, it could cause complications. I suggest we meet tomorrow morning to discuss next steps. All right, Karis said quietly. Also, Aries mentioned in her letter that not all documents and assets were given to me yesterday, that there are details only you know. Silence. Then. Yes. That's correct. Miss Holloway expected trouble. Let's talk tomorrow at 8 a.m. before the business day begins. I'll be there. That night, Karis slept on the small couch in the bakery's back room. She turned off her phone. She didn't want to hear Jarvis's calls when he realized she wasn't coming home. In the morning, she walked into Barkley's office carrying a paper bag full of fresh croissants. Baking calmed her nerves before big moments. Miss Monroe, Barkley greeted her, standing up. He was tall and slim with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses. Please have a seat. Karis offered him a croissant, and he accepted it gratefully. Incredible, he murmured after one bite. Now I understand why Aries valued you so much. Mr. Quinn, Karis said, jumping straight to the point. What exactly did Aries plan? And what are these other assets she mentioned? Barkley wiped his hands, opened a drawer, and took out a file. Aries knew about her illness for more than a year. During that time, she reorganized everything. He opened the folder. The Legacy Crown isn't just a restaurant. It's made of multiple parts. You own the building. You own the brand. But there are also separate assets. He went down a list. The wine cellar, worth over $200,000, is owned through a trust where you are the sole beneficiary. The kitchen equipment is leased through another company, also controlled by you. The vendor contracts are under Aries Holloway and Associates, where you're listed as the partner authorized to sign. Karis stared in disbelief. Why is everything so complicated? Barkley smiled. Aries was a brilliant businesswoman. She organized everything for tax reasons. But now, all this protects the most valuable parts of the restaurant from anyone with bad intentions. My husband and mother-in-law, Karis muttered. I don't comment on family matters, Barkley said politely. But Aries made sure you were covered no matter what. He handed her another document. A list of key staff members Aries trusted completely, including Chef Bram Cassidy and manager Nita Price. Karis held the list tightly. Her throat tightened. Even after death, Aries was still looking out for her. What should I do now? She asked quietly. Technically, you can walk into the restaurant right now and take control, Barkley said. But you might want to wait and see what your husband and his mother tried to do. If they act without power of attorney, they'll be committing fraud. Karis hesitated. Part of her wanted to go claim what was hers immediately. But another part, calmer and more careful, told her to wait. I'll wait, she decided. But I want to meet Bram and Nita. I need to know what's happening inside the restaurant. After her meeting with Barkley, Karis returned to her bakery. She needed to open the shop, serve customers, and find a discreet way to contact the Legacy Crown staff without alerting Jarvis or Tamsin. The day went by in its usual rhythm. Baking, helping customers, taking orders. The familiar work soothed her. Among her regulars was Franklin, the mail carrier, an older man with gentle eyes who adored her blueberry muffins. He stopped by near dusk. Karis, dear, he said cheerfully. One of your special muffins, please. As he ate, Karis asked casually, Franklin, do you deliver mail downtown? Doesn't the Legacy Crown fall on your route? Sure does, he nodded. Lovely place. And I'm sorry about Aries. May she rest in peace. She was a good lady. Yes, Karis replied softly. Listen, I need to send a message to Chef Bram Cassidy. Could you help me? Franklin smiled. For you? Absolutely. Especially if the message comes with one of these muffins. An hour later, Karis received a short note from Bram, passed along by Franklin. Jackson Bridge. 7 p.m. sharp. At exactly 7, she stood on the bridge overlooking the slow-moving Chattahoochee River. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt wet and cool. Monroe, a deep voice called behind her. She turned to see a large man in his 40s with short, graying hair, sharp blue eyes, and the hands of someone who'd spent years in a kitchen, calloused and marked with old burns. Mr. Cassidy, Karis said, holding out her hand. Thank you for meeting me. Call me Bram. He shook her hand firmly. Let's walk. I don't want us being seen together. They walked along the river as Bram explained everything that had happened in the last day. Your mother-in-law showed up this morning with your husband. She claimed to be the new owner. She had papers, but I didn't look too closely. He shook his head. Aries warned me there might be a fight after she passed. She told Nita and me to trust only you. How did the staff react? Karis asked. Cautiously. Most of us worked with Aries for years. We're not used to sudden changes. Bram frowned. But your mother-in-law didn't waste a second. First thing she did was fire the sous chef, Liam. Said he was too expensive. He's been here 10 years. He knows the menu better than anyone. She can't just fire someone like that, Karis said, shocked. Technically, she offered him severance. But her tone, well, you get the idea. Bram sighed. Then she announced cuts. Wants to slash the wine list. Remove signature dishes she finds too expensive or too fancy. Karis felt her stomach twist. And the reservations? She asked. That's where Nita got nervous. She explained we have regulars who book months ahead, that our reputation depends on consistency. But Ms. Niles said new business perspective matters more than old habits. They stopped at the railing and looked down at the water. Bram faced her. Aries trusted you, Ms. Monroe. She said you have a gift, a way of giving people more than food. You give them memories, experiences. Not many people can do that. Karis blushed. I don't know if I deserve that kind of praise. Aries didn't compliment people lightly, Bram said firmly. If she believed you should take over, then you should. So what now? Karis asked. Tamsin, Ms. Niles, isn't slowing down. She'll keep changing everything. The staff is getting restless. Some like Liam are already gone. Others are waiting to see what happens next. Nidita is staying strong, even though it's really hard for her. And me? I'm too old and stubborn to change now. But the legacy crown isn't just a workplace for most of us. It's the family that Aries created, and none of us want to lose it. They exchanged phone numbers, and Bram promised to keep Karis updated. The next day, Karis met with Nita Price, an elegant woman in her 50s who had worked at the Legacy Crown almost since it opened. They sat together in a small cafe far from downtown while Nita explained everything that had been happening at the restaurant. She's firing anyone who dares to disagree with her, Nita said, nervously stirring her tea. She cut the wine list and removed some of our most expensive dishes. She even switched our seafood supplier to some shady company owned by one of her friends. Bram is furious. The food quality has dropped, but the prices stayed the same. And the customers? Karis asked. The regulars noticed right away. Some already canceled their reservations. Yesterday, Judge Fitzgerald. He's been eating at the Crown every Friday for 15 years. Left without finishing his main course. He said this wasn't the Crown he knew. Karis felt her worry grow. The restaurant's reputation, something Aries had spent decades building, was falling apart. And then there were the vendor contracts and the wine cellar that Barkley mentioned. For the first time during their meeting, Nita smiled. That part is interesting. Ms. Niles ordered half the wine collection to be sold to optimize assets. But when Edward, the sommelier, tried to access the cellar, he found out he didn't even have the correct key. It turns out the wine cellar technically isn't part of the restaurant. And how did Tamsin react? Karis asked. She completely lost it. She demanded full access to everything, But Edward told her he could only take orders from the registered owner of the wine collection. Nita leaned closer. That's you, Ms. Monroe. You're also the only one allowed to sign most of the vendor contracts. Aries planned everything. On the 6th day after the takeover, Karis received an unexpected visitor. She was closing the bakery when the bell rang and Jarvis walked in. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. I finally found you. I wasn't hiding, she said calmly as she wiped down the tables. I've been here the whole time. You didn't answer your phone. You didn't come home. I'm sleeping on the couch in the back room. It's comfortable enough. Jarvis looked confused, like he didn't expect her to be so calm. Look, he said. I know you're upset, but we have to talk. Things got complicated. Karis raised an eyebrow. Complicated how? The restaurant. There are problems, he admitted. Mom made some changes and people aren't happy. Especially that Chef Bram. He's sabotaging her instructions. And Nita, the manager, keeps bringing up some contract that supposedly can't be changed without your signature. Not supposedly, Karis said. They really do need my signature. Jarvis ran a hand through his hair, clearly nervous. Look, I know what my mom and I did wasn't right, but we meant well. And now we need your help. Talk to the staff. Tell them Mom is acting for you. But she's not, Karis said, meeting his eyes. I never gave Tamsin permission to act for me. She took the documents by force, and that doesn't give her any legal right. A few days later, everything reached a breaking point. According to Bram and Nita, Tamsin completely changed the menu, swapping out gourmet dishes for cheaper, simpler ones. She fired 3 more employees, including a sommelier who disagreed with her plan to sell parts of the wine collection. Regular customers started disappearing. A local newspaper even wrote a small article asking what had happened to the once famous legacy crown. Karis stayed calm. She kept working at her bakery, met with former Crown employees, and discussed options with her lawyer. But she didn't make a single move to stop Tamsin. Why won't you step in? Bram asked during another meeting. She's destroying everything Aries worked for. I know, Karis said quietly. But sometimes you have to let a person give themselves enough rope to hang themselves. On the 10th day after taking over the restaurant, Tamsin made a huge mistake. She refused to serve a state representative who'd eaten at the Crown for over 20 years. All because a friend of hers, a shady local businessman, wanted his table. The scandal blew up immediately. The representative wrote an angry post online, and journalists picked up the story. By nightfall, the legacy crown was at the center of a media storm. Everyone was talking about what had happened to the legendary restaurant after Aries Holloway's death. That same night, Bram finally broke. He resigned, refusing to cook frozen dishes at high prices. 4 other cooks walked out with him. Without a chef, without half the kitchen staff, and with a ruined reputation and canceled reservations, the legacy crown was close to shutting down. Tamsin had no idea how to handle the crisis. Only when things became truly desperate did Jarvis realize that his mother wasn't saving the restaurant. She was destroying it with her reckless decisions and need for control. The day after Bram left, the legacy crown opened later than usual. Tamsin paced around the dining room, trying to find a replacement chef. Her bright pink suit clashed terribly with the elegant interior Aries had designed, soft colors and dark wood everywhere. I don't see the problem, she told the remaining staff, gathering them in the dining room. If one cook leaves, we'll just find another. Atlanta is full of people who can cook. Nita, still trying to hang onto her manager position, cleared her throat. Ms. Niles, Bram isn't just a cook. He's a Michelin-starred chef who worked here for 15 years. Many customers come just for his dishes. Tamsin waved her off. Nonsense. People come to the Crown for the name and the atmosphere. A star or 2, who cares? As long as the food looks good. That's what matters. No one dared to argue. The staff exchanged worried looks. It was clear now. The new owner didn't understand anything about fine dining. Tamsin kept giving orders. Robert will handle the chef duties today. We'll keep things simple. Only the most popular dishes and no French names. People should understand what they're ordering. Robert, a young chef with only 3 years of experience, turned pale. He was talented, but nowhere near ready to lead a prestigious kitchen. "Ms. Niles," he said, "I don't think I can take on the head chef role. Maybe we should close for a while and find a professional replacement for Bram." "Close?" Tamsin snapped. "Absolutely not. The Crown is not closing for a single day. You'll be fine. Just cook the same dishes as before, only simpler." She turned to Nita. "How many reservations do we have today?" Nita checked her tablet. 18 tables for dinner. 3 are regulars. One of them is Senator Harrison. "Great. We'll manage." But that night marked the true beginning of the end for the Legacy Crown. "I don't see the problem," Tamsin said as she gathered the remaining staff in the dining room. "If one cook left, we'll just find another. Atlanta is full of people who can cook." Nita Price, still trying to hold on to her manager position, cleared her throat softly. "Ms. Niles, Bram isn't just a cook. He's a Michelin-starred chef. He's worked here for 15 years. Many customers come because of his dishes." Tamsin waved her hand like it meant nothing. "Nonsense. People come to the Crown for the reputation and the atmosphere. 1 star, 2 stars. What difference does it make? As long as the food looks decent." No one dared to argue. The staff just exchanged worried glances. Their fear was now real. This new owner had no idea how fine dining worked. Tamsin continued giving orders. "Robert will handle chef duties today. We'll keep the menu simple. Only the most popular dishes. No French names. People should know exactly what they're ordering." Robert, a young chef with only 3 years of experience, turned pale. He was talented, but he wasn't ready to run a high-end kitchen. "Ms. Niles, I'm not sure I can manage as head chef," he said nervously. "Maybe we should close for a while and find a proper replacement for Bram." Tamsin narrowed her eyes. "Close? Absolutely not. The Crown won't lose a single day. You'll be fine. Just cook the same dishes but simpler." She turned to Nita. "What are our reservations for today?" Nita checked her tablet. 18 tables for dinner. 3 are regulars including Senator Harrison. "Excellent. We'll handle it." But that night became the beginning of the end for the Legacy Crown. Robert tried his best, but without sous chef Liam and the other experienced cooks, he couldn't recreate Bram's dishes. The kitchen was slow and messy. Plates went out late and not always properly cooked. Senator Harrison, a gray-haired man with perfect manners, sent his steak back twice and then asked Nita to come over. "My dear, what is happening?" he asked softly, though he looked truly worried. "I've eaten here every week for 20 years. I've never been this disappointed." Nita glanced toward Tamsin, who was chatting with other guests. "We're having temporary difficulties, Senator. Bram is no longer with us." "What?" The senator didn't hide his shock. "But he's the soul of this place." "What happened?" "New leadership, new vision," Nita said carefully. Senator Harrison nodded. "I heard Eris left the restaurant to her goddaughter. Is that true?" "Yes, but it's a complicated situation." "I understand," he sighed. "Please give the chef my condolences. And bring me my check. I'm afraid I can't finish dinner tonight." When he left, other disappointed guests followed. By the end of the evening, half the tables were empty. People either walked out early or canceled their reservations at the last minute. Tamsin was furious. "What's going on?" she snapped at Nita as the last diners left. "Why so many cancellations? And what is all this complaining about the food?" Nita rubbed her temples, exhausted. "Ms. Niles, the Legacy Crown is a fine dining restaurant. Our customers expect a certain level of quality and service. They notice the changes, especially our regulars." "Then we need new customers," Tamsin cut in. "More normal people. Less snobby. People who just want good food without all the pretentious stuff." "But the restaurant's reputation." "Reputation can change," Tamsin said, interrupting again. "Starting tomorrow, we'll lower prices by 20% and advertise. I already arranged it with the local paper." Nita knew it was pointless to argue. Tamsin didn't listen to anything that didn't match her own ideas. That same night, In the small apartment above Sweet Dreams Bakery, Karis got an unexpected visitor, Jarvis. He looked worn out, eyes red from lack of sleep. "I didn't know you lived here," he said, looking around the tiny space. "It's temporary." Karis placed a cup of tea in front of him. "What brings you here so late?" Jarvis cupped the mug with both hands, as if trying to warm himself. "The restaurant isn't going the way Mom planned." Karis's voice held no gloating, only a hint of dry irony. "It's gotten complicated. Bram left. Several other cooks left with him. The customers aren't happy. Mom," he hesitated. "Mom thinks it's just a temporary setback, but I don't know." "What did you expect, Jarvis?" Karis asked gently. "The Legacy Crown isn't just a location and a name. It's the people, the traditions, the reputation built over the years." Jarvis ran a hand through his hair, his usual nervous gesture. "I know. It's just, Mom was so sure. She always dreamed of owning her own restaurant. An opportunity to take someone else's inheritance," Karis said softly. Jarvis winced. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken those papers. It was wrong." Karis looked at him, trying to tell if he truly regretted it, or if he was just overwhelmed by the chaos. "What do you want from me, Jarvis?" "Help us," he said quietly, almost begging. "Talk to Bram. Ask him to come back. Or at least help us find a new chef. You have connections." Karis shook her head. "You don't understand. Bram won't return while your mother is in charge. He respected Eris and her vision. And Tamsin, she wants to turn the crown into something completely different. She's just trying to make it more affordable, more profitable," Jarvis said weakly. "At the cost of quality and reputation," Karis replied. "It won't work. The Legacy Crown has never been a place for ordinary people. It's a restaurant for special moments, for food lovers, for people who value excellence and are willing to pay for it." Jarvis sighed. "I tried telling Mom, but she won't listen. She always thinks she knows best. And I can't stand up to her." It wasn't a question. It was a sad truth. Jarvis dropped his gaze, and the way he did it said more than words ever could. All his life, he had been controlled by his authoritarian mother, and even now at 36, he still couldn't find the strength to oppose her. "I just want things to get better," Jarvis said softly. "I want the restaurant to work, and I want you to come home. I want everything to go back to how it was." Karis looked at him carefully. "Nothing will go back to how it was, Jarvis. Too much has changed." The next day, Karis met with Barkley Quinn in his office. The lawyer greeted her with a calm, satisfied look. "I hear things aren't going well at the Legacy Crown," he said, motioning for her to sit. "Yes," Karis nodded. "Bram is gone. Customers are unhappy. Jarvis came yesterday to ask for help." "And what did you tell him?" "That nothing would be the same." She smiled a little. "But that's not why I'm here. I need your advice on what to do next, possible steps." Barkley leaned back, studying her. "Do you want to take back control of the restaurant?" "Yes, but not just take it back. I want to build something new while still protecting Eris's legacy." Karis pulled out a notebook from her purse. "I've met with Bram, Nita, and the other key staff. They're willing to work with me. I have an idea to open a new restaurant somewhere else." Barkley leaned forward, interested. "Tell me more." "I found a location near the old Fourth Ward alley," Karis explained. "It's smaller than the Crown, but it has character. An old building with stone walls and arched windows. The owner is willing to rent it with an option to buy." She turned the page. "I want to open a restaurant called Eris's Legacy. I'll keep the best traditions of the Crown but add my own style. Bram will be the chef, Nita the manager. And for funding," Karis smiled. "That's where I need your help." Eris mentioned some assets set aside from the main restaurant, besides the wine cellar. "Yes, of course." Barkley opened a file. "As I said, Eris created a very complex ownership structure. The wine cellar, worth over $200,000, is owned by a separate company, and you are the only shareholder. The professional kitchen equipment is also in your name through a leasing company. And there's an investment account Eris created for business development, about $300,000. Karis listened, surprised. She hadn't known about the investment account. Aries was a careful woman, Barkley said. She wanted to make sure you had the resources to grow. No matter what happened with the main restaurant, you can use those funds to open a new place. And legally, you can remove the wine collection and the kitchen equipment from the Legacy Crown anytime. They belong to you, not the restaurant. Karis thought quietly. And the name? The Legacy Crown. It's a well-known brand. The brand is registered to a company owned by Aries, which is now under your control, Barkley explained. The building is separate and temporarily managed by Ms. Niles, but she has no legal authority. The brand, the recipes, the concept, they're all yours. A plan began forming clearly in Karis's mind. She could take everything of real value from the Legacy Crown, staff, equipment, wine, the brand, and move it all to the new location, leaving Tamsin with nothing but an empty shell. Meanwhile, the situation at the Legacy Crown was getting worse every day. Tamsin's advertising campaign did bring new customers, but not the kind the restaurant was made for. People who came because of the lower prices were annoyed to find the food still expensive compared to regular places, and the quality no longer matched the high level. The older customers, after hearing Bram had left and the menu had changed, began canceling their reservations in large numbers. The wine list, once the restaurant's pride, was cut in half. Tamsin even ordered the sale of the most expensive bottles to improve cash flow. But when the sommelier tried to access the cellar, he discovered that only Karis had the keys and codes. On the 7th day after Bram's departure, journalists from a major food magazine visited the restaurant. They planned to write a report on how the Legacy Crown had changed after Eris Holloway's death. Tamsin, not realizing the risk, happily agreed to an interview. "The crown is being refreshed," she said while posing for photos in the dining room. "We're making it more modern, more accessible to everyday Atlantans. Eris created something great, but times change. We have to adapt to stay relevant." The journalist, a young man with sharp eyes, smiled politely and took notes. "And Bram Cassidy?" he asked. His departure shocked the culinary community. Tamsin brushed it off. "Bram is talented, but his vision didn't match ours. We're looking for a chef who shares our desire for more democratic cuisine." "Democratic?" the journalist repeated, raising an eyebrow. "More straightforward, less pretentious. Clear dishes, good quality. Why do we need all those French names and tiny portions that cost so much? People just want to eat well." After the interview, the journalist ordered dinner. He chose one of the last remaining Crown specialties, lamb fillet with rosemary and truffle mash. Under Bram, it had been a masterpiece. Now it looked flat and ordinary. He took a few photos, thanked them politely, and left, barely touching the food. The article came out 2 days later and destroyed what was left of the Legacy Crown's reputation. The headline read, "Crown in Freefall: How Atlanta's Legendary Restaurant is Losing Its Greatness." The article described everything that had gone wrong since Aries' death: the staff departures, the decline in quality, and Tamsin's new vision. The journalist contrasted her comments about cuts and democratic cuisine with Aries Holloway's philosophy of excellence and respect for fine dining traditions. The article went viral instantly. Food bloggers and critics shared it everywhere, along with their memories of the crown under Aries and Bram. Someone even started the hashtag Save the Crown Y'all. When Jarvis showed his mother the article, Tamsin exploded. "Snobs. They're all snobs," she yelled, pacing around the empty dining room. "Do they think they know what a restaurant should be?" "Mom, maybe we should rethink our strategy," Jarvis said carefully. "Maybe go back to the original concept. Find a chef with fine dining experience." "You're against me too?" Tamsin turned sharply. "I thought you were on my side." "I just want the restaurant to survive," Jarvis said tiredly. "Right now we're losing customers, money, and our reputation. I don't need those snobby customers. New ones will come. People who appreciate my vision." But no new customers came. After the harsh article, reservations dropped even more. On Friday nights, usually the busiest, only 3 couples were dining at the Legacy Crown. On the 9th day after Bram's departure, the final blow arrived. In the morning, Several men in suits walked into the restaurant with documents. "We represent the owner of the wine collection and the kitchen equipment," they told the shocked Tamsin. "According to the contracts, these assets can be seized at any time at the owner's request." "What do you mean, owner?" Tamsin snapped. "This restaurant is mine." "The building is yours, Ms. Niles," the lawyer replied calmly. "But the equipment and the wine collection aren't. They belong to Ms. Karis Monroe." That same day, the professional kitchen, the fridges, the wine cellar, and even some of the furniture that had been brought in separately were all removed from the legacy crown. That evening, Jarvis found his mother sitting alone in the empty restaurant with a bottle of whiskey. "It's over," she said in a flat, dead voice. "Without equipment, we can't run anything. Without wine, we lose half of our profits. The staff is leaving." Jarvis sat down beside her, not knowing what to say. For the first time in his life, he saw his strong, always confident mother completely defeated. "We could buy new equipment," he said, though he already knew how weak the idea sounded. Tamsin let out a bitter laugh. "With what money? Do you even know what a professional kitchen costs? And that wine collection Iris built over 30 years. She took a long drink straight from the bottle. "We've been played, Jarvis. Your wife was much smarter than I thought." On the 10th day of Tamsin's takeover, a sign appeared on the door of the legacy crown, "Closed for renovations." But everyone who knew the truth understood. There would be no renovations. The legendary restaurant, Aries Holloway's life's work, was gone, at least in the way the people of Atlanta knew and loved it. Meanwhile, across the city, workers were busy inside an old stone building with arched windows. A new restaurant was rising. Aries's legacy was getting ready to open, bringing together everything Aries had built, along with Karis's own ideas. That night, as the legacy crown shut down for good, Karis's phone rang. Jarvis's name lit up the screen. Karis stared at the glowing phone, letting it ring for a moment. Seeing his name filled her with mixed emotions. A part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted to know why he was calling now, of all times. The phone kept ringing. On the 5th ring, she finally answered. "Hello." Her voice was calm and motionless. "Karis." Jarvis's voice was shaking with panic. "Thank God. We need to talk. It's urgent." "About what?" she asked, keeping her tone steady. Though inside, she felt a small, sharp satisfaction hearing how desperate he sounded. "The restaurant, the crown." He let out a shaky breath. "Everything has fallen apart, Karis. Mom is falling apart. The lawyers are saying we might go bankrupt because of the rent and vendor contracts. You have to help." Karis stayed quiet, letting him speak. She was sitting in a small office at the back of her new restaurant, which was set to open in a week. Sample menus that she and Bram had worked on for days were spread across her desk. "Karis, are you there?" Jarvis sounded frantic. "This is a disaster. Mom poured money into renovations and new furniture. She even took a loan on the house. If the restaurant doesn't reopen, she'll lose everything." "What can I do to help?" Karis asked calmly. "Can you?" Jarvis hesitated, as if scared to even ask. "Can you talk to Bram? Try to convince him to come back. Or help us find a new chef. Or maybe return the equipment and the wine collection." "Return the equipment and the wine," Karis finished for him. "Yes." For the first time, he sounded hopeful. "Can you? Please. Mom will do anything now. She admits she was wrong. She knows she rushed things." "I can't return the equipment or the wine," Karis said firmly. "They're already installed in the new place." "New place?" Jarvis's confusion quickly turned to panic. "What new place?" Karis took a deep breath. She knew this conversation was coming, but she had hoped it would happen in person. "I'm opening a new restaurant, Jarvis. Aries's legacy. Bram is with me. Nidita is with me. Most of the crown staff came too." There was silence for a long moment. Then a strangled sound, half laugh, half sob. "So while Mom and I were trying to fix the crown, you were building your own restaurant? Stealing our staff? Our equipment?" "I didn't steal anything," Karis said, her voice still calm but edged with steel. "Everything I took belonged to me legally. And the staff left because they didn't want to work with your mother." You planned everything, Jarvis said accusingly. You knew from the start. No, Karis said truthfully. At first, I was hurt by what you did. Then I got angry. And then, I realized Ares's legacy wasn't the building. It was the people, the traditions, the recipes. Everything she spent 30 years building. And your mother nearly destroyed it in 10 days. Jarvis didn't respond. She imagined him pacing in the empty crown, finally realizing the scale of the disaster. I need to see you, he said at last. I need to talk to you in person. Where are you? Karis hesitated. Should she tell him the new location? What if he brought Tamsin or a lawyer? I'm at Old 4th Ward Alley number 19, she said. But Jarvis, if you bring your mother or any lawyers, I won't talk to you. I'll come alone, he promised. 20 minutes after the call, Karis put her phone down and stood up. She walked to the window and watched the Atlanta sunset. The cobblestone street outside, lined with warm lanterns, was the perfect home for a restaurant that honored tradition while embracing change. Exactly 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jarvis stepped in. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair a mess. It was clear he hadn't slept. Karis leaned against the doorway and let him take in the space. The restaurant wasn't fully ready, but most of the big work was done. Stone walls, wooden ceiling beams, arched windows, like an old sanctuary. Wooden tables with snow-white tablecloths stood neatly in the center, the same style they used at the Crown. On the back wall, behind a glass door, the wine cellar glowed with Ares's famous bottles. Come in, Karis said, motioning him forward. Watch your step. Some cables are still out near the entrance. Jarvis walked in slowly, staring at everything. The familiar furniture, the photos of Ares on the walls, the kitchen tools visible through the half-open kitchen door. So this is it, he said softly. All this time, you were planning this? This. Karis replied. Yes. Do you want some coffee? The kitchen is up and running. Jarvis nodded, still dazed. She led him to a small office where they could talk privately. Bram glanced up from the kitchen, nodded, and went right back to his sauce. When they sat down with their coffee, Jarvis finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me you were opening your own restaurant? Karis raised an eyebrow. Would you have listened? After you took the documents and gave them to your mother? Jarvis looked down. I know I did something terrible. Mom was so convincing. She said you weren't capable, that the Crown would go bankrupt under you, that this was her chance to finally make her dream come true. And you believed her over your own wife, Karis said quietly. It wasn't easy, he whispered. I was torn apart. I couldn't sleep, especially when you didn't come home or answer your phone. But you still did nothing, Karis said. Even when it became obvious your mother was destroying the restaurant. Jarvis rubbed his face with both hands. I tried talking to her. I really did. But you know how stubborn she is. She never admits she's wrong. She never listens. Not to anyone. And you've obeyed her your whole life, Karis said, looking at him. Not with anger, but with regret. You know, Karis said quietly, this whole restaurant mess just confirmed what was already wrong in our marriage. You never stand up to your mother. Not even for me. Jarvis looked up at her, pain filling his eyes. I love you, Karis. I've always loved you. I know, she replied softly. But sometimes love isn't enough. You also need courage. You need to stand beside the person you love, even when it's hard. They went silent for a moment as Jarvis thought about her words. Then he asked the question that had clearly been haunting him. What about us, Karis? Do we still have a future? Does our marriage? It was a question Karis had been struggling with for days. Did she still love Jarvis? Could she forgive what he'd done? Could trust really be rebuilt after all that happened? I don't know, she answered honestly. Right now my priority is opening the restaurant. That's where my focus is. Our relationship, it needs time and space. You want a divorce? He asked, his voice full of hurt. I want clarity, Jarvis, Karis said. These past few weeks showed me how much control your mother has over you and over our marriage. I can't and won't go back to the way things were. If we stay together, It has to be different, equal, respectful, and honest. Jarvis nodded, accepting what she said. And my mom, he asked. She's desperate, Karis. She put all her savings into fixing up the crown. She even took out a loan. That was her choice, Karis said firmly. She could have done the honest thing, admitted that I own the restaurant and offered to work with me. Instead, she chose lies and manipulation. Now she has to live with the consequences. You're not going to help her? He asked softly. Not even a little? Out of compassion. Karis hesitated. She didn't feel good about Tamsin's desperation, though part of her believed the woman had brought it on herself. Still, she was willing to reach out. Even to someone who had mocked her for years and tried to steal her inheritance. I'll see what I can do, Karis finally said. Maybe we can work something out about the crown building. But I will not go back there, and I will not let Ares's name or recipes be used. That's not negotiable. Jarvis let out a relieved breath. Thank you, Karis. I know you don't have to help, not after everything I'm not doing it for you or your mother, Karis cut in. I'm doing it so Ares's name doesn't get mixed up in any scandals or lawsuits. She deserves better. Jarvis stood, knowing the conversation was finished. When's the opening? He asked, looking around the restaurant differently now, not as something lost but something new. In a week, Karis said. A small soft opening for a few guests, then the official launch. And will you invite me? He asked carefully, his voice uncertain. Karis looked straight at him. His eyes were full of hope and fear. We'll see, she said quietly. It depends on what you do in the next few days. After he left, Karis sat in her office, thinking about how unpredictable life had become. Just a month ago, everything had seemed so steady. Her little bakery, her marriage, dinners with Ares. Now, everything was different. She owned a successful restaurant. Her marriage was barely holding on. And even her relationship with Tamsin seemed to be shifting into something. Not friendly, but maybe healthier. A knock pulled her out of her thoughts. It was Bram. Ms. Monroe, he said. He still addressed her formally, even though they'd worked side by side for weeks. I finished the main menu. I'd like to go over a few details with you. Karis smiled and pushed her thoughts aside. Of course, Bram. And please call me Karis. We're partners now. He nodded, a small smile breaking through his usually serious face. How did the talk with your husband go? He asked, setting the menu pages down. Better than I expected, Karis said honestly. He finally understands what happened. I think he realizes his mistakes. And his mother? That's more complicated, Karis sighed. She invested in the crown, took out a loan, and now she may lose it all. Bram let out a short laugh. She got what she deserved. Ares would be spinning in her grave if she saw what that woman did to her restaurant. I know, Karis said softly. But I don't want our success to be built on someone else's pain, even if they brought it on themselves. Maybe there's a way to help her without giving up what matters to us. Bram studied her for a moment. You're a lot like Ares, he said suddenly. She also tried to find solutions that didn't burn everything down, even when dealing with people who didn't deserve her patience. His words touched Karis deeply. To be compared to Ares, not only in the kitchen, but in character, was the best compliment she could receive. Thank you, Bram, she said quietly. That means a lot to me. They started discussing the menu, and Karis threw herself into work, pushing aside her personal worries. There was still so much to do before the grand opening, and she wanted to create a restaurant Ares would be proud of. That night, just as she was about to leave, her phone rang. It was Barclay Quinn. Ms. Monroe, the lawyer said in his usual professional voice. I have news about the Legacy Crown building. A restaurant group from New York wants to buy it. They're interested in entering the Atlanta market and are offering a good price. Karis paused. Selling would solve a lot of problems, but something held her back. Can I think about it until tomorrow? She asked. I have an idea I want to talk to you about. Of course, Barclay replied. I'll be in the office at 9. When the call ended, Karis stood in the middle of the nearly finished restaurant. The sunset poured through the arched windows, throwing long shadows across the stone walls. Ares's legacy already had its own spirit, different from the old crown, but honoring the best of what Ares had created. A risky idea formed in Karis's mind, one that might work for everyone. Instead of selling the crown building, she could offer it to Tamsin to rent. For a completely new restaurant, with a new concept, a new name, aimed at a wider audience. It was what Tamsin had tried to do with the crown, just without destroying a legacy in the process. Of course, Tamsin would have to admit her mistakes, something she rarely did. But desperation changed people. Karis smiled to herself. Ares always said that in the restaurant business, just like in life, success wasn't only about cooking great dishes. It was about finding solutions that left a good aftertaste for everyone involved. Maybe Karis had just found exactly that. Feeling lighter than she had in weeks, Karis left the restaurant, finally looking toward the future with real optimism. Whether Tamsin accepted or not, whether her marriage survived or not, Karis knew that Ares's legacy would become her own success. A place where she could share her talent and her vision while honoring the woman who had shaped her life. The morning of Ares's legacy's grand opening was surprisingly bright for Atlanta. Karis arrived before 7, just as the first sunlight touched the cobblestones of the old Fourth Ward. She wanted a quiet moment alone before the chaos of the day began. The restaurant looked completely transformed. The stone walls, once cold, now held antique photos of old Atlanta streets and portraits of Ares through the years. Fresh flowers, lavender and wild herbs, Ares's favorites, sat in the center of the room. White tablecloths, polished silver, crystal glasses. Everything looked elegant and warm, just like the old legacy crown at its best. Karis walked slowly through the dining room, touching the chairs, checking the tables. Then she peeked into the kitchen, where work had already started. Bram and his team were quietly preparing for the evening. He greeted her with a respectful smile, but didn't pause from stirring a sauce. "Everything is going according to plan," Nidita said as she appeared beside Karis, holding a clipboard. 24 confirmed reservations. The wine is being served from the cellar. The menus are printed. The staff will be ready by 5. Karis nodded gratefully. Nidita's and Bram's support over the past few weeks had been priceless. Without their experience, she knew she wouldn't have been able to open the restaurant on such short notice. "How do you feel?" Nita asked, watching her closely. "Ready for the big day?" "Yes and no," Karis answered honestly. "I've waited for this moment, but now I'm a little scared. Ares built her reputation over 30 years, and I'm just her goddaughter who still runs a small bakery." Nita placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ares saw something in you that you still don't see in yourself. She never made decisions lightly, especially when it came to her life's work. If she chose you to be her successor, it means she trusted your abilities completely." Those words steadied Karis. She took a deep breath and smiled. "Thank you, Nidita. It's time to stop doubting myself and just do what needs to be done." The rest of the day flew by with final preparations. Karis checked everything. How the colors were arranged, the lighting, the temperature of the wine, and the staff's perfectly clean uniforms. She wanted Ares's first night to be absolutely flawless. At 4 p.m., with only 1 hour left before opening, someone knocked on the door. Karis, who was checking a table setting, flinched in surprise. Through the glass door, she saw Jarvis holding a bouquet of white roses, her favorite. He looked out of place without his usual business suit. He wore simple jeans, a blue shirt, and a bit of stubble on his face. Karis hesitated but opened the door. "Hi," Jarvis said softly. "I know you're busy, but I wanted to see you before the opening. I wanted to wish you luck." He held out the bouquet, and Karis accepted it, feeling conflicted. Part of her still resented him for betraying her, but another part appreciated the gesture. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't expect to see you today." "I'm not staying for the opening," Jarvis added quickly. "I know my presence might be inappropriate, especially for the staff. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. What you've done in such a short time is amazing." Karis looked at him in silence, trying to understand his true intentions. Was he being sincere, or was he trying to win her back? "How is your mother?" she asked, changing the subject. Jarvis's face darkened. Not good. She's still in shock over how everything turned out. She invested all her savings into renovating the crown, and now she's left with an empty building and debts. I've been talking to Barkley about possible solutions. Karis said, there's a buyer for the building, a restaurant group from New York. But I was thinking of another option. Jarvis looked surprised. What is it? Tamsin can rent the building at a reasonable price, Karis explained. Not to continue the legacy crown. The name stays with me, but to open a new restaurant with her own concept. Something more democratic, like she wanted, but without destroying the legacy that already exists. Jarvis stared at her. You would do that after everything she did? Karis shrugged. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it because it's what Aries would do. She always looked for solutions that helped everyone. Jarvis shook his head as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're an incredible woman, Karis. I'm only now starting to truly understand that. He paused, then added quietly. I had a serious talk with my mom. The first real talk in years. I told her manipulation and control ruined our marriage and almost ruined my life, and that I won't let her interfere in my decisions anymore. How did she take it? Karis asked, genuinely curious. At first she was furious, Jarvis said with a weak smile. She blamed you for everything. She said I was an ungrateful son. But then once she calmed down, I think she started to understand. She even admitted she acted impulsively with the restaurant and should have learned more about the business before changing everything. That's progress, Karis said. Yes, Jarvis murmured. And I got an apartment. I decided we both need space to think. And I need to learn how to live on my own without Mom's influence. Karis was surprised. That was a huge step for someone who had spent his whole life living with, or near, his mother. I'm happy for you, she said sincerely. That's an important step. They stood in silence for a moment, and somehow that silence held more understanding than many of their past conversations. I have to go, Jarvis finally said. You have a big night ahead of you. I just wanted you to know I'm working on myself, and I hope someday you can trust me again. He turned to leave, but Karis called after him. Jarvis, tell your mother my offer to rent the building is still open. She can contact Barkley if she's interested. Jarvis nodded gratefully and left, leaving Karis with the roses and a swirl of mixed feelings. At exactly 5 p.m., the doors of Aries' legacy opened to the first guests. Among them were Aries' longtime friends, loyal Legacy Crown customers, well-known food critics, and several members of the press. Karis greeted each guest personally, feeling both excited and strangely calm, as if Aries were still there, quietly supporting her. The dinner was arranged as a tribute to Aries Holloway. The menu included both her classic dishes and new creations made by Bram and Karis. Each dish came with a small card telling the story behind it, or sharing an anecdote from Aries' life. When everyone was seated, Karis stood up to give a short speech. Good evening, she began, and the room fell silent. Thank you for joining us for this very special moment. Aries' legacy was created not only as a restaurant, but as an extension of my godmother Aries Holloway's life's work. She taught me that food isn't just nourishment for the body, it's also nourishment for the soul. She paused. 30 years ago, Aries opened a small cafe that grew into the legendary Legacy Crown. Today we begin a new chapter in that story. We're keeping the tradition and quality that made the crown famous, but we're also adding something of our own. Aries always said, honor the past, but look to the future. That's the principle we follow. Guests nodded and raised their glasses. Tonight, Karis continued, Chef Bram Cassidy and his team will present dishes that reflect the heart of Southern American cuisine with a modern twist. Every dish has its own story. We hope these stories touch your hearts the same way they touched ours. She raised her champagne glass. To Aries Holloway, whose passion for cooking and love for people inspired us all. And to new beginnings that keep the best parts of the past alive. The room burst into applause, and the dinner began. Courses arrived one by one, each a small masterpiece. Lamb fillet with rosemary and truffle mash. Aries' special fish recipe from Old Georgia with modern touches. And desserts created by Karis herself, including her famous lavender and honey cake. Critics took notes, photographers snapped pictures, and guests shared excited comments. Karis visited every table, listening to feedback, telling stories about Aries, and answering questions about the restaurant's future. By the end of the night, it was clear the opening was a huge success. Journalists promised glowing articles. Critics predicted Michelin stars. Loyal Legacy Crown customers were thrilled the spirit of their favorite place lived on. When the last guest left, it was past midnight. The staff was exhausted but happy. Bram allowed himself a real smile for the first time in a while as his team congratulated him. "We did it," Nidita told Karis when they were alone in the empty dining room. "Aries would be proud." "This is just the beginning," Karis replied. But her voice now held confidence, not fear. The next day, news about Aries' legacy was everywhere: newspapers, food blogs, social media. The reviews were glowing. Reservations came flooding in, and the restaurant's phone didn't stop ringing. A week later, Karis received a surprise visit. Tamsin and Niles showed up at the restaurant between lunch and dinner, when the dining room was almost empty. Instead of her usual loud outfits, Tamsin wore a simple gray suit. "Can I speak to the owner?" she asked Nita, who looked surprised to see her, and led her to Karis's office. Karis greeted her with polite restraint. Tamsin pointed to the chair across from her. "May I?" "Of course," Karis said. Tamsin sat down, smoothed her skirt, and stayed quiet for a moment, looking unusually unsure, almost fragile. "I came to talk about your offer," she finally said. "The lease for the Crown building." Karis nodded, waiting. "At first I wanted to refuse," Tamsin admitted. "My pride wouldn't let me accept help from," she paused, "from someone I treated badly." "I understand," Karis said calmly. "But then I looked at the empty building. I counted my debts. And I realized I have no choice." Tamsin gave a small, tired smile. "Besides, Jarvis helped me see things differently. He said I'd always dreamed of having my own restaurant, but instead of building my own dream, I tried to steal someone else's." Karis was shocked by how honest and self-aware Tamsin suddenly sounded. It seemed like everything that happened recently had truly changed this strong, forceful woman. "What have you decided?" Karis asked. "I'd like to accept your offer," Tamsin said. "I want to open a new restaurant in the Crown building, with a different name and a different concept. Something more accessible for everyday people. A bistro with good, home-style cooking at reasonable prices." "I think that's a great idea," Karis said warmly. "That neighborhood really needed a place like that." Tamsin nodded, then added, clearly struggling with the words, "I also want to apologize. For the way I treated you over the years. For what I did with Aries' inheritance. I acted out of jealousy and ambition without thinking about the consequences." Karis was stunned. She had never heard her mother-in-law apologize before. "I appreciate your words, Tamsin," she said after a moment. "And I'm ready to move forward without holding a grudge." "Thank you." Tamsin looked genuinely grateful. "One more thing. Jarvis is really worried about your marriage. He's truly changing, Karis. For the first time in years, I see real determination and independence in him." Karis stayed quiet. She didn't want to discuss her marriage with Tamsin, not even this new, softer version of her. "I'm not interfering," Tamsin added quickly, noticing her reaction. "I just wanted you to know he's truly sorry and trying to be better." When Tamsin left, Karis sat alone in her office for a long time, thinking about how much her life had shifted. A month ago, everything seemed predictable and steady. A small bakery, her marriage to Jarvis, and occasional dinners with Aries. Now everything was different. She owned a successful restaurant. Her marriage was hanging by a thread. And her relationship with Tamsin seemed to be slowly healing into something healthier. That night, while the restaurant filled with guests, Karis stood at the bar watching her team work. Bram led the kitchen with his usual discipline and focus. Nidita oversaw the service, moving gracefully between the tables. The waiters, the sommelier, and the kitchen assistants all worked together like one well-oiled machine. "This is your legacy," Aries Karis thought. "Not just the recipes, not just the restaurant, but the people you brought together. And I promise to protect and grow what you created." At that moment, Edward the sommelier approached her with a bottle of wine. "Miss Monroe," he said with a polite smile, "the guest at table 5 asked me to give you this." He said it was Aries' favorite wine, and she always opened a bottle on special occasions. Karis took the bottle and looked at the label. It was a rare vintage Aries adored and kept only for special moments. She turned toward table 5 and saw Jarvis sitting quietly in the corner. Their eyes met across the busy restaurant. Jarvis gave her a small smile but didn't try to come over. He respected her space and her time. Karis hesitated, then nodded to the sommelier. "Open the bottle and pour 2 glasses," she said. "I'll join my guests soon." She didn't know if her marriage with Jarvis had a future. She didn't know if she could ever completely forgive his betrayal. But standing there, in the middle of her thriving restaurant, surrounded by people who believed in her, Karis felt something new, something solid. Whatever happened, she could handle it. Aries' legacy lived on in her. Not just in her cooking, but in her confidence, her strength, her ability to forgive, and her courage to move forward. It lived in her ability to create not only beautiful dishes, but real, meaningful relationships. In her ability to honor tradition while still daring to try something new. Karis walked toward Jarvis's table, feeling her inner strength grow with every step. A strength she had never felt before, but that had always been inside her, waiting to be unlocked. "I'm really glad you're here, and that I could share my story with you. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see how many of us are here. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'd love to know where you amazing people are tuning in from. I upload new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on your screen. So go ahead and choose what to watch next.